Hey, how's it going? I've got a story about how when you give, you receive. Stick around. Hey everyone, I've got this great story about how when you give, you receive. And I've heard this story many times before. It's not my original story. However, I think it's really poignant for me to share it with you now in the current climate. There's so many people out there just giving and giving and giving, and I think they need to be rewarded, but they are getting rewarded just in ways that we don't really fully understand. Anyway, the story goes a little bit something like this. There's a young beggar about 18 years old, and he doesn't have much. You know, he's got his clothes that he's got on, and he has a little bit of food, but every now and again he keeps realising that his food goes missing. And he's like, what the is going on? What's going on? I don't understand. One day he catches a mouse, and he says to the mouse, crikey mate, you know, you keep stealing all my food, what are you doing? And the mouse says, well, unfortunately mate, it's your destiny. You literally are only ever going to have 8 things in your life, and those 8 things are just, that's it. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's ridiculous. And the mouse says, well, if you want answers, you need to go and speak to Buddha. Buddha will give you all the answers that you require. And he's like, well, do you know what? I'm going to do that because I can't have this as my destiny. So off he sets on his journey. It gets late one night and he sees a house and he knocks on the door and he says, excuse me, he says, I'm really sorry to bother you at this late hour of night, but what I'd really like is somewhere to stay for the night. And they say, yeah, of course, but what are you doing? He says, well, I'm travelling to see Buddha to ask him a question. And you know, it's just, I just need to get there. And they're like, come on in, but we need a favour from you if you're going to see Buddha. He says, yeah, anything, what do you need? He says, well, can you ask him a question from us? And they're like, yeah, not a problem. She says, well, we've got an 18-year-old daughter and she's never spoken, and we just want to ask Buddha why that is. He goes, yeah, not a problem. Next morning he gets up on his travels. Eventually he reaches a mountain range that's so big and so impassable that he just looks and he's almost defeated. And he's like, do you know what am I going to do? And then he sees this guy and he realises this guy's a wizard, and he's got his staff and his beard and, you know, the sort. He says, listen, I need a favour. Can you show me a way through these mountains? And the wizard says, I can do one better. He says, what I can do is I can fly you over. And the guy goes, blooming heck, that's incredible, thank you so much. He says, but why are you going that way? He says, well, I'm off to see Buddha. And he says, I've got a couple of questions I've got to ask him. And he's like, yeah, no problem, brilliant. So he flies him over. And as he's flying, he says to him, he goes, if you're going to go see Buddha, will you ask him a question for me? And the young beggar says, yeah, of course, no problems, what is it? He says, well, for 500 years I've been practicing my trade. He says, and by now I should have enlightened and gone to the next level. And he's like, yeah, of course. He says, if you just ask him that for me, that would be incredible. He says, I just want to know why that's not happened. No problems. So he drops him off to the side of the mountains, and the young beggar keeps walking. Travels a bit further and he gets to this impassable river, and it's just this widespread water. And he's like, whoa, why am I going to get across here? This is ridiculous. There he sees this turtle, and this turtle's just mooching about. It's a great big turtle. He says, well, Mr. Turtle, he says, I need a favour. He says, yeah, what do you need? He says, I want to pass this water, but there's no way I can get across. He says, well, what the hell do you want to pass this water for? He says, you know, it's a bit crazy. He says, well, I'm off to see Buddha. He says, oh, cool, I'll give you a lift. He says, but on one condition, you've got to ask him a question from me. He says, yeah, no problems. He goes, well, in my practice, you know, I've been waiting 1,000 years and by now I should have become a dragon. He says, and I can't understand why it is, so could you ask that question to Buddha for me? He says, yeah, no problems whatsoever. So he takes him across the water and he bids him farewell and off he goes. The young lad travels a bit further and he gets to finally an amalgamation of people, and he says, and he realises Buddha's speaking. And Buddha says, right, you can ask me 3 questions, and 3 questions only. And he's like, I've got 4 questions. What am I going to do? So I've got the question about myself and why my destiny is the way it is. I've got the question about the family with the young daughter who doesn't speak. I've got the question for the wizard, and I've got the question for the turtle. He says, what am I going to do? And he thinks for a second. And then he thinks about a selfless act. He thinks, well, do you know what? That turtle's been waiting nearly 1,000 years to sort of become a dragon, and it's never really happened. He says, so I've got to ask that question. He says, and the wizard's been waiting 500 years. And, you know, I can't, he needs to go to the next level, and I can't not ask that question. It would be unfair. 500 years. He says, and the young girl could spend an eternity not talking. That's just not fair. He says, so I'm going to have to just become a beggar. He says, I'm happy with that. I can just go back to begging. I'm absolutely committed to that. He says, that's what I'm going to do. So he asks the question, says, Buddha, these are my questions. And the Buddha replies, these questions are all so simple, my friend. He says, the first one, he says, your turtle. He says, the turtle is scared to come out of its shell. The moment it comes out of its shell, it will become a dragon and fly away, and it'll have everything it's ever wanted. He's like, wow, that's amazing. He says, the wizard's held onto his staff. He says, but he just needs to let it go. So if he lets go of his staff, he will continue on to the next path, and he will be enlightened. He's like, wow, that's incredible. Thank you so much, Buddha. He says, and the young girl, he says, when she meets the love of her life, her absolute soulmate, she will talk. And he's like, brilliant. So he sets off back, and he's like, do you know what? I feel like these are really good answers for these people. He gets to the turtle. He says, listen, Mr. Turtle, he goes, I've got the answer for you. I spoke to Buddha. He says, all you've got to do is come out of your shell. And the turtle's like, what? He goes, you've got to just come out of your shell. So he gives him a lift across the water, and he comes out his shell, and he becomes a dragon. And he's like, what? He goes, amazing. And in the bottom of his shell is these pearls from the very deepest part of the bottom of the ocean. And the dragon says, you can have those, mate. They're yours. Take them. So he's now got this incredible wealth. Anyway, he continues on his journey, and he finds the wizard again. He says, listen, Mr. Wizard. He says, for you to go to the next level, what you've got to do is put down your staff. He says, that's the only thing holding you back. And the wizard says, wow, that's amazing. So he gets the staff, and he gives it to the young beggar. And the young beggar's like, wow, that's amazing. I've got this ultimate power. And he's like, thank you. And he enlightens, and he goes. It's amazing. And then he carries on his journey, and he reaches the house, and he knocks on the door. And the two parents there go, oh my God, you're back. He says, yeah, I've got the answer to your question. And at that exact moment in time, the young girl comes down the stairs and says, is that the young man who was here before? And the story of that is that obviously she's found her soulmate. In his complete act of giving, that young man received so much. He received power, wealth, and absolute unimaginable sort of love. And we can all take so many different stories from that story, you know, and there's so many lessons that we can learn about these different things. But one of the biggest ones I like to say is that it's limiting beliefs that we hold on to. These limiting things, like the turtle wanted to stay in its shell. It didn't want to come out. It didn't want to prosper. The man didn't want to let go of his staff and become the next level, because we limit ourselves in what we believe we can do. I think that in every single one of us there is a beggar who is on a journey learning about our lives, and if we're just willing to give and give relentlessly, then we'll all receive, and we receive so much more. And it doesn't have to be power, it doesn't have to be wisdom, it doesn't have to be internal love. We all receive something inside of ourselves that is so much greater than that, and it's a sense of well-being, it's a sense of goodness. And if we all concentrate on that just time and time again, we will get such a bigger, better, prosperous life. So my friend, I tell you this, be daring, be you, be all you can be the beggar on a journey, and let go of those limiting beliefs. Just be a mindset peacock. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around and listening to my little story there. If you do like what you saw or what you heard, feel free to just give us a like, a thumbs up, a comment, and just share it around the world. I think it's a message that many people could do with hearing at the moment. If you give, you receive. Until next time, see you soon.